Ghislaine. The name itself was designed to evoke sophistication, a French intonation for a British heiress. Born on Christmas Day, 1961, she was the favorite, the youngest daughter of Captain Robert Maxwell, the brutal, blustering media baron. Her father was a titan who stole from his own employees to feed his empire. But to her, he was the son. She was the only child he seemed to truly see, perhaps because her birth was shadowed by tragedy. Days after she was born, her 15-year-old brother Michael was left in a coma after a car crash. He died 7 years later. In the vacuum of that grief, little Ghislaine demanded attention. She learned early that to exist in the Maxwell dynasty was to be useful to powerful men. She became her father's hostess, his confidant, his ally. She was polished at Oxford, photographed by Tatler, and gifted a $30 million yacht named, of course, the Lady Ghislaine. It was a floating palace, a symbol of absolute entitlement. It was also, perhaps, a premonition. A vessel built for pleasure, destined to drift into darkness. Then, in 1991, the Titan fell. Robert Maxwell was found dead, naked, floating in the Atlantic off the Canary Islands. Suicide, they whispered, fleeing ruin. The pensions he'd plundered were empty. The empire collapsed. Ghislaine Maxwell, aged 29, fled the wreckage. She sailed the Lady Ghislaine across the ocean to New York. She left behind a disgraced name. She arrived in Manhattan looking for a new sun to orbit, and she found one in a man who wore sandals with suits and smiled like a predator who knew he would never be caught. His name was Jeffrey Epstein. To the outside world, Jeffrey Epstein was a financier, a recluse, a genius. In reality, he was a void that needed constant filling. He needed money. He needed validation. And he needed girls. Ghislaine provided all three. She became his girlfriend, then his best friend, then his operational partner. She didn't just facilitate his crimes, she curated them. She became the den mother to a cult of abuse. From 1994 to 2004, they built a network. Homes across the country, each one a trap. But Ghislaine was the bait. She was the friendly woman, the sophisticated European. She would appear at schools, at camps, at shopping malls. She targeted the vulnerable girls from broken homes, girls with dreams, girls who needed money for tuition. One survivor, Annie Farmer, was just 16. Ghislaine convinced Annie's mother to let her go to a college retreat at Epstein's ranch in New Mexico. Ghislaine would be the chaperone. But when Annie arrived, she was the only student there. Annie later testified that Ghislaine undressed in front of her, normalized the abnormal, and then, one morning, crawled into bed with her. Ghislaine touched her breasts. Grooming, they call it. But that word is too clinical. It was a theft of innocence, executed by a woman who was supposed to be a protector. Virginia Giuffre was just a teenager working at Mar-a-Lago when she was recruited. Ghislaine told her she could open doors to a better life. Instead, she locked her inside a nightmare. In her testimony, Virginia described the training, the indoctrination. It wasn't just Jeffrey demanding these acts, it was Ghislaine. Ghislaine explaining how to be subservient. Ghislaine present in the room. One witness described a phone call between Ghislaine and Jeffrey. Ghislaine was on the phone, giving a resume of a young girl to Jeffrey, listing her attributes like livestock. She's so pretty, she's so strong. When survivors asked Ghislaine why they had to do these things, she would dismiss them. Don't be silly. She normalized the abuse. She made the victims feel like they owed Jeffrey something. Because Ghislaine Maxwell was the madam who insisted on politeness while selling children. Another woman, who was interviewed by the FBI, recalled a moment of chilling clarity. The three of them, Jeffrey, Ghislaine, and the teenager, were walking on the beach at his island hideaway. Jeffrey walked between the two women and slid his hands inside both of their bikinis simultaneously. At that moment, the victim later said, "It dawned on me. It was a them thing. Not him, them." Ghislaine Maxwell was not a bystander to history. She was the architect of the waiting room. And when the girls were too old, too traumatized, too broken, she helped find new ones. She once casually asked a victim if she knew anyone who could perform oral sex on Jeffrey because she didn't feel like doing it. She was the gatekeeper, the fixer, the one who told a young woman, discussing the possibility of Epstein having a child, that she was getting a bit old. The cruelty was casual, the evil banal.
For years, the walls held. Jeffrey Epstein made his first plea deal in 2008, a secret handshake with power that let him walk with a slap on the wrist. Ghislaine stayed in the shadows, but the survivors refused to be silent. They pushed. They sued. They shouted into the wind until the wind changed. In 2019, the dam broke. Federal prosecutors in New York indicted Jeffrey Epstein on sex trafficking charges. He was locked in a cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. And then he vanished. August 10th, 2019. Suicide, they said. But Ghislaine Maxwell did not vanish. She hid. And there is a difference. For nearly a year, she became the world's most famous fugitive. She slithered away, as the FBI put it, to a gorgeous 156-acre property in New Hampshire. She played a game of cat and mouse while her victims remained haunted. They found her on July 2nd, 2020. The FBI woke her up. The woman who had once partied with princes and presidents was led away in handcuffs. The trial was a reckoning. In a Manhattan courtroom, the women Ghislaine had dismissed as trash became the most powerful people in the room. They looked at her. They pointed at her. They told the world exactly who she was. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was Ghislaine's own words, spoken years earlier to a friend who asked about the girls she brought to Epstein. "They are nothing," she had said. "They are trash." On December 29, 2021, the jury disagreed with her assessment. They found her guilty of sex trafficking minors. They found her guilty of conspiracy. In June 2022, the judge looked at the woman in the designer clothes and saw her for what she was. The sentence was 20 years. The United States Attorney put it plainly. This sentence sends a strong message that no one is above the law. But for the survivors, it was never about the message. It was about the truth. As Annie Farmer said after the verdict, the 16-year-old she harmed had grown into a woman who was now able to use her voice.
Today, Ghislaine Maxwell sits in a low-security prison in Texas. She shares a facility with other white-collar criminals. She maintains her innocence. She appeals her sentence, and she waits. In 2025, she sat for hours of interviews with the Department of Justice. She spoke of presidents and princes. She denied everything. She took the fifth before Congress. She is a vault of secrets, and she knows that silence is the only currency she has left. Her lawyers have begged for clemency. They have argued that she is a scapegoat, but the facts are not opinions. The verdict is not an interpretation. Ghislaine Maxwell took young girls, some as young as 14, and delivered them to a predator. She was present for the abuse. She participated in it. She laughed about it. She built a machine of suffering and lubricated it with her social graces. And yet, for all the justice served, there is no closure. Epstein is dead. His money is gone. But the questions remain. Who else knew? Who else participated? Who else looked away? The survivors have been clear. They still want answers. They want to know how the organization worked. They want to know why others walked free. Ghislaine Maxwell was the daughter of a man who stole millions. She became the partner of a man who stole childhoods. And now she is the inmate who steals the final truth by keeping it locked inside her head. Ghislaine Maxwell wanted to be remembered as a socialite, an heiress, a woman of achievement. Instead, she will be remembered as the woman who fed a monster, the woman who looked at children and saw trash, the woman who thought she was untouchable until the touched finally spoke.